Well, good morning. I trust that you are doing well in this new normal, being the church in changing times. I want to begin with a story. It's an old story, and you may have heard it, but just in case you have, just keep it to yourself until we get to the end of the story. I just think it illustrates where I want to go this morning with our devotional. Of course, our reading today came from 1 Timothy chapter 4. We've made it into chapter 4 now, and we read the first 5 verses. There were 2 brothers. One's name was Bill and the other named Jack. And they were about a year apart in age, with Bill being the older of the 2. And they were like most boys. They were inclined toward mischief, and one of them, Jack, was the one that seemed to be always in trouble. His parents tried lots of things to pull him in line. They tried all of the new fangled ideas for discipline and helping him be motivated and all of those kinds of things, but nothing really seemed to work very well. And so after discussing it, Mom and Dad decided they would go and they would speak to Pastor Fred, their minister. They explained to him their dilemma and suggested that maybe he could sit down and talk with Jack, and maybe he could help Jack understand something about the error of his ways. Reluctantly, Pastor Fred agreed to do that. But he was a little more than anxious about it. He had never sat down and talked with a little boy about something of this matter, and he wasn't really sure how to approach it. So after he spent some time meditating and thinking on it, he decided that the thing to do was to impress upon Jack that Jesus is with us all the time, and no matter what we do, no matter where we go, no matter what we say, Jesus is always aware of it. He thought that's the way I want to go with this. That's the idea. And so the day came for Jack to come in for his appointment there at the pastor's office, and he was right on time, just like he was supposed to be. He walked in, and the pastor showed him a seat, and the minister went around and sat behind his desk. And while the minister was sitting behind his desk and Jack was in the big leather chair in front of the desk, the pastor exchanged a few pleasantries, and then he said, as he leveled his gaze down to Jack's level, he said, "Jack, do you know where Jesus is?" Jack just sat there. He didn't respond. He didn't react. So the pastor figured, well, maybe he didn't understand me. So he said to him again, "Jack, do you know where Jesus is?" Jack's eyes began to get big, but still no response. So the pastor said to him one more time, he said, "Jack, son, I need for you to answer my question. Do you know where Jesus is?" Suddenly, Jack jumped out of his chair. He ran out the door, out the church, down the street, ran all the way to his home, ran in the door, down the hall, into his bedroom where Bill lay on one of the beds in the bedroom. Jack pulled a suitcase out of the closet and started throwing clothes in it just as fast as he could. And Bill said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And Jack said, "Man, get your stuff together. We got to get out of here. Jesus is missing and they think we took him." Well, like I said, it's an old story. But it illustrates something that I think is true to what Paul has written in 1 Timothy 4. Paul described the problem with false teachers. Remember, that's what Paul has been addressing through the first 3 chapters of 1 Timothy. reminding Timothy back at Ephesus that where false teachers can influence people to fall away from the faith. And in chapter 4, he actually goes so far as to illustrate that there are those who seem to either completely get turned away from the faith, or there are those who indulge on the opposite end of the spectrum in all kinds of sensual pleasures to the point that their conscience becomes dulled toward the faith. So what Paul says at the end of our reading today was to illustrate for Timothy and those with whom Timothy shared this letter that God did not intend to give restrictions to us, nor did God intend for us to abuse His blessings. I don't know if you remember, but there was an old gospel song many years ago that was titled, "God's Gonna Get You for That." That sounds like a really loving God, doesn't it? Well, there is the aspect of judgment to God, but there's also mercy and grace. And so the real point in what Paul is saying is that when we look at what God has given us, we're reminded of what Genesis 1 says, that after God created everything, He saw that it was very good. You see, God has provided for us everything that we need, even in this season of COVID-19. God has blessed us in more ways than we could possibly count. And as long as we receive those blessings appropriately with a spirit of gratitude and thanksgiving, and demonstrate that and live that out in our lives, we discover something of the joy of our salvation. Consider the following questions. What is standing in the way of you experiencing the blessings of God in your life? What is standing in the way of you experiencing the blessings of God in your life? Question 2. Have you ever experienced a dulled conscience regarding the faith? If so, how? Have you ever experienced a dulled conscience regarding the faith? If so, how? What does it mean to you that you have been blessed by God? What does it mean to you that you have been blessed by God? Well, I hope you have a great day. Go and live your life in this new normal, being the church in a changing time, and know the blessings of God today and always. Amen.